forth, and everyone's got. That's one thing when you're in a household, everyone has an opinion.
Yeah, and a need, right?
And
one of the two.
Or a need.
Exactly.
And sometimes both.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. Yeah. So let me just turn down the volume. I was watching the best one. We've talked about late night before, but I like watching Scott Van Pelt because he does SportsCenter, but it's with attitude. It's with with personality. Right. But man, I wanted to get with you, see if we can get a quick 30-minute, 40-minute, or go until it goes pod. Right. Because there's a couple of topics out there, and like the edgier stuff we tend to do here, and as I always say, the pie in the sky stuff I usually do Sunday night. The family friendly. Right. So we can jump around however you want to jump around. I know we were trading topics back and forth, so I'm not sure what you would like to discuss first.
I'm easy. Let's wander around and see what we hit. No agenda is always the best agenda, is in my opinion.
I wanted to touch in the world of technology with what's happening with Baltimore and malware and cyber attacks. And here's a place that's totally under siege. Yeah. And we're not really hearing about it.
Yeah. Why aren't we hearing about this? You want to clue in your listeners, or you want me to do it?
Oh, yeah.
Well, from what I understand, Baltimore has had like a cyber attack for like the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. And they have to use workarounds, and a lot of stuff has been offline, and it's you can't pay them, right? Because then you'll get another guy next week. But the idea that it's been shut down for 2 weeks, and I'm pretty sure the feds are in this. So the feds can't it's the whole thing is just scary to me. That we're in this new age. It's a new language that few of us speak, and
it's about
we originated it. Yeah.
It's about ransomware, where hey, I'm going to lock up all your pertinent data files, historical files, access until you pay me in Bitcoins. Yeah. Because as we know,
Bitcoin.
Want in Bitcoin. I've seen it. Where
so if you're listening and you don't know why or what Bitcoin is, that's a marker of like the world passing us older cats by, right? It's the idea of me being 60 and seeing a horseless carriage go by and go, that thing just makes a racket and disturbs my cows, versus me being 17, 18, 19 at the same time and seeing it whiz down the same road, shoulder to shoulder with this person who just thought it was like a noisy racket maker, and seeing the future. So we need to have less people who don't know how to do this. And the best way you do that is education, right? You should be teaching coding and all this stuff in school. So you'll get some of these people. But you'll also have more people to be able to kill it off, right? And then you'll have exceptional people who work in your government who can make this a 15, 20-minute, hour-long thing at the most. But this has been 2 weeks. It's just, I don't know. It's just crazy. So,
and for those that don't know, we did if you do a search, if you follow the podcast, any way that you access your podcast, you type in latenightparents.com, and if you type in blockchain, have a 5-minute pod on blockchain because a lot of times, Shawn, people don't want to hear 40 and 50-minute rants.
Right, agreed.
So you got to give it to them in those bite-sized morsels from time to time. You say, hey, I'm going to talk about this topic and this topic alone.
Right.
Where you can have their attention span and they'll be focused on it and everything else like that. Baltimore's in a bad way because, like I said, the minute you do pay the money, now you're stuck.
Yeah, because they're going to come back.
Because they're going to give you access to X amount of your data.
Right. So if they give you any data, right, they'll just take the money and they could just disappear entirely.
They could.
Right. But once you pay, they know they can come back.
Oh yeah, and once you pay, trust me, you just open the door because they have access to your data. So how this is affecting people, you got to understand. People who may want to purchase a house and they need for like the title search to happen because before you purchase a house. Certain things that need to happen on behalf of the bank or behalf of the city, the title search has to do. All that, those services are locked down right now.
Right, marriage licenses, all this. I mean, your government moves as a stream, right? Things have been churning since 1776 and slowly adapting and getting better. And now we're at this place where you walk into government facilities to get passports and driver's licenses and whatever the case may be. And when these guys shut it down, that backlog kind of becomes like, you undo all these people. I see what you're saying. But wow, I don't know. I just
And why aren't we hearing about it?
Yeah, well, I think it's because it's an embarrassment, quite frankly, right? I mean, like I said, the government should have been able to swoop on in there, undo this, and catch these guys. Excuse me, and catch these guys. But what's going on is, I mean, this is why they want to be able to kind of shut the internet off when necessary, because the people who run this system don't know how the system operates, right? And the new people who come into the system don't tell you, most of them won't tell you where the back doors are, right? Because they get to be like the cool person who knows where this secret entrance is. But when you get so many people with so many back doors, your government is just a giant block of Swiss cheese where, like, Edward Snowden, right, can walk out with all these passwords, and then you can find out years later that the nuclear code's passwords were 00000. When I heard that, by the way, I was like, they've got to be kidding me. That's got to be the stupidest real story I think I've ever heard in my life. But, it's this. We're all kind of running on faith in the system without actually asking if the system actually still works. So, I don't know. The system needs to adapt. I mean, you can't have I think these guys are like Eastern European. This sounds to me like the Russians playing games like they did with the elections, because I don't know. I just think it sounds that way to me. And we can't seem to undo it. I mean, put a bounty on this thing, right? I will put 3 bounties on this. One, I'll put a bounty on any American person who can undo this, right? Because there's someone out there, someone hacked the Apple password fix, right, when the government couldn't do it. They were like, hey, I don't know how much it was. I think it was like $2 million or $5 million or some crazy number like that to be able to open Apple passwords. And some guy was like, I can do it for you for X amount of money. And so once you show one FBI guy, it propagates. Now it's standard practice of how we do things. So now they know how to do this thing. Great. So do the same thing. We have this issue. If you can come and crack it and put it back online in 12 hours, the government will give you tax-free $5 million. And I bet you this will have been these people have even when they can't solve the problem, they can't think outside of the box enough to solve the problem. So, yeah, I mean, I'm worried because if they can do that to Baltimore, a major city then they can muck around in other places and mess around with other things, and it freaks me out.
Yeah, I it's funny because any way that you look at it, privacy is key. You got all these tech companies talking about privacy, and every which way.
Well, they're talking about violations. They're talking about privacy because we're talking about privacy, and their response to us talking about privacy is to say that they're interested and they take it seriously, and they don't. I watch C-SPAN because I'm one of those people, and Ocasio-Torres, the New York senator, was on, and she was giving these tech companies, not tech companies, these I think they were security companies. She was asking really good questions about all this facial recognition stuff, and I was telling somebody a couple of years ago, I was like, just because you invent a new fantastic thing doesn't mean you can implement it if we're built on privacy, right? So if I come up with a camera that lets me look through your front wall of your house and see what's inside, it may be a great technological advancement, but we can't use it here. You know what I mean? Unless you come up with a workaround that the American citizenry agrees to, because the founders gave you a right to privacy, and no one seems to care about it anymore. Black people routinely get unlawfully searched, and people make excuses for why it happened. And I used to tell when I lived in Brooklyn, I used to tell those transplants, I was like, if they can do it to me, they can do it to you. They just haven't done it to you yet. And that's essentially what it is. You shouldn't be comfortable that it's on the books because they use it on somebody else. Because eventually, when the economy gets so bad that you don't have a job, whoever you are, I'm talking to a listener right now, right, whoever you may be, and you don't have, a gig and you want to protest, then all those dirty tricks that you were good with, and they are dirty tricks, will be visited upon you, right? So the idea of unlawful searches, the idea of being able to speak your mind, right? Like the idea of freedom of the press and freedom of speech are woven together, right? So the press is for people who get together and start a newspaper. But you don't need to have a newspaper to, like, speak your mind and say your piece. And you don't need a free speech corner. This is America. That's from Britain, right? The whole place is a free speech zone. So it's that kind of thing. And it's also like, your right to like bear arms. It's also kind of this simple thing that and mind you, the people who did it had no idea. I mean, quite frankly, it's sort of a useless. I don't want to say useless because it's going to make people mad, but it's outdated, right? Yeah, you can have a gun. Yeah, knock yourself out. Have 20 if you want. You just look crazy to me and most people. And if your argument is, how do we get on guns? If your argument is right, if your argument is like the government is tyranny, the government has all sorts of stuff that, you and your long-arm rifle, shotgun, AR-15, scoped out, whatever. I mean, they've got drones. What do none of the arguments make sense when you look at it from a rational point of view for some of this stuff, because technology has advanced past it. But the things about, like speaking your mind and, being able to assemble and all these things are intrinsically ways for you to communicate with your neighbor about what is on your mind, right? So whether that's a protest thing, or I think like the government is stupid, or I love the government, or it's this idea. And one of those intrinsic ideas is the right to privacy, right? And that covers being searched. That covers you walking down the street and the government running you through a database. That covers, like that town who had like a serial rapist. They were like, the cops couldn't catch them. They were like, well, we're just going to get all of them in to give a DNA sample. And one guy was like, I'm not doing that. I have and he was right. but it made him look guilty, and then went all the way up to the Supreme Court. But if you keep making it easy, they would. You have to protect these rights for the next generation, right? So, I mean, all these things sort of tie together in this idea that, and this all started with Congresswoman Ocasio-Torres asking really good questions about the right to privacy, which got me off on the jag about, like, our Constitution. But, yeah, so...
So, hey, I just want to bring it back to privacy, where and just wrap this up really quick. It's about the tech companies were focusing on it because the government was focusing. Because when it comes into regulations, when it comes into FERPA and HIPAA, PII, the stuff that we're dealing now with the EU, with GDPR, CPAA, which is going to hit January 1, 2020. Ultimately, when there's a hack or personal data is just out there is one thing. But when you're local government and you're totally shut out from your data and resources and public records, that's a totally different thing.
Yeah, Who do you think is at who do you think is at play here? If this is a foreign government, this is, I mean, you know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's some guy from Kansas trying to get over on Baltimore. I think this thing is such an embarrassment. They're not really talking.
It's an embarrassment, but it's the local government. It's the local government that clearly dropped the ball on this.
I agree.
And that the feds are looking into it. I'm like, okay, if you got 15 people working on this, you need 30.
Yeah, look, if the feds have a physical, tactical SWAT team where they go in and they kick your door down and they punch your dog in the face and they push your grandma over, then they need to have the same thing, the same kind of response team that show up with all the computer stuff like the movies and start like spicing and hacking in. And, if that team
like
of SWAT guys who do, if that team of SWAT guys is like 2 trucks of people with all this gear, then their tech team needs to be at least like 2 trucks of people with all the best, computer gear in their khaki pants and their hoodies, right? Because that is just as legitimate a battlefield and a battlefield response than guys in guns in armored vests, because they've been locked out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And Baltimore is a major American city with millions of people in it. How many people are in Baltimore? I may have to Google that before I say name. But you know what I mean? And I don't want to belittle anyone in the middle of the country, but it's not like some of these stories where I hear people say, "Oh, I'm from a town of like 2,000 people, 3,000 people." I mean, there's a couple of million people in Baltimore. I mean, but yeah.
I mean,
like you said earlier,
regardless,
get married, right?
Regardless on size, they're 45 minutes away from Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and then there's that. Exactly. Yeah, for all we know, this could have been a stage run to muck with a city before they moved on to, this whole thing had me nervous. I've seen American movies have made me good and paranoid about stuff like this. The last 15 years have been nothing but dystopian, zombie, world falling apart, government attack movies. You know what I mean? So it doesn't take much for me to kind of like begin to get my head spinning.
So blame Netflix.
Yeah, exactly.
Blame Netflix.
All
hey,
right, so
I just want to give a...
Founded in 1729.
Okay.
Bless you guys. Yeah. Population 620,000. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Hey, want to give a big shout out to our friends at Brooklyn Crafted. Brooklyn Crafted is a line of craft beverages on a mission to define the field of craft sodas and beverages. Simplicity, quality, and taste combined with the focus, concern for natural, high-quality ingredients that has created a precedent for their products. I just received the Brooklyn Crafted Ginger Beer. Want to thank you guys, and we'll send out a tweet and an Instagram post in the morning. So once again, thanks again to our friends at Brooklyn Crafted. I guess from there, if you want to talk BushBaby, which is going to be available on Revolt TV, which is owned by Sean Combs, Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, the man of a million names. It was a quick 15, 16-minute short film on gentrification and looking at it from a comedic, I guess, point of view.
Right. Love story element, finding yourself element, boy in the city element, girl in the city element. All in about, what is it? What'd you say, 15, 16 minutes?
16 minutes.
Yeah,
16 minutes.
I liked it.
I got to tell you, I was a little biased before I saw it because when I was sent,
you should say that.
I was because when I
had to watch it twice. But go ahead.
Oh, okay. So before I even watched it, I was biased because of, I said, how are we making a mockery of gentrification? Because, it gets to the point where I was looking at it from a viewpoint of normalcy. Oh, this is normal. It's gentrification. Yeah, this is fine. This is, this is the part of the American way. And I'm like, how is this the part of the American way? How is this something? But then I took the time out, you and I were talking earlier, to watch it. And I said, okay, you know what? This is pretty good. This is pretty good. I totally went in the other direction. And because the point of view was the point of view of, hey, I live in Brooklyn, and this is what's happening to my neighborhood. And I think it's apropos for you to speak about it because you were a former Brooklynite.
Right. They shot it in my own neighborhood of Fort Greene. So I look at this, and like I said, I was sort of hot when I was like, you're being flippant about people who essentially built that place, who invested their time and energy, raised families there, and then you push them out for, not push them out, but essentially, I don't even want to get in. I mean, I've talked about gentrification entirely too much. But this story is, so I had to watch it twice because I have these feelings of being displaced by people with money who came in, who did not know. I felt very much like the Pilgrims. Like they showed up, you showed them the lay of the land, how not to get mugged, where the cool things were, and then they, made the city this kind of like West Coast, East Coast, like Los Angeles, essentially. So fine, right? So then we come back to this, this take on this filmmakers. I guess it's the writers because I've written screenplays before, right? More than one, short stories, drew a couple of comic books, just an all around kind of like do it all kind of creative person. And I watched this thing and trying to put my own bias aside because you don't want to go in hating something. So I watched it twice. And I come to the conclusion that, you want my honest assessment here?
Yes, definitely.
All right. I come to the conclusion that it is good, right? I bring my own crap to the judgment of it. But I hang out with enough young people and people not like me, Jewish people, Puerto Rican people, young urban black people, older professional people, like all these kind of weird mixes, grandmas, grandpas, always telling me 1,000 different angles on the same topic from where they're standing in life, right? So I'm like, all right, well, I've got some issues with being an ex-New Yorker. So I look at this through the eyes of when I hang out with my nephew, how he explains the world to me when I'm arguing with him. And you know that phrase, hater, right? So this phrase implies, if I say, I don't like all these X doing Y, right? So I'm going to go, don't be a hater. That implies, let them live their life. You live your life, right? Don't hate on somebody. Do your own thing, which I appreciate. But it's gotten to mean no matter what I do, don't be a hater, right? So it implies that no matter what I'm going to do whatever, and it gets more extraordinary and broad. So with the young set, and this looks like a young filmmaker, young film writers take on this, right? Their idea is they're tackling something serious like gentrification, but they also have what I would call some inappropriate humor in it. And in the 70s, inappropriate humor was
the norm.
Fart jokes. Can I say fart jokes? Fart jokes and like off-color blue jokes. Now, inappropriate humor may be also like it was also race jokes, right? So now you won't find any race jokes. You won't find any women jokes or homosexual jokes or Jewish jokes. But you'll get this energy of like people would do. I saw a skit where someone did a skit with Dr. King, right? And I was like, what? But at the same time, they get to interpret Dr. King, I guess. But I was like, there are some things like you see all these. Here's another one. That one of the earlier versions of this that wasn't part of this movement. I'm about to say Will Smith. I forgot his name. Kevin Smith, the director of Clerks and Chasing Amy, and Dogma, 3 of my favorite films. Script doctor, great, So he's famous for this version of Jesus Christ in Dogma with the thumbs up, and he's like grinning, and it's like I think they call him Buddy Jesus or something. And when I first saw this movie, I was like, and it's hard to offend me as I'm not one of those kind of like people who grew up like crazy Christian, kind of like, you know what I mean? But I just thought, I was like, wow, that's just kind of like, so this short, this 17-minute short, I think you should watch it. It's got sort of that kind of energy to it, and I think it has that energy to it for me because I'm not the demographic, and at the same time, I was the demographic as an ex-film person. So I get trying to make a film in the city, and I applaud them for doing it. And they use a lot of people in this 17 minutes, right? So, yeah, you pass around the love, you put people in your short. I totally get it. But, yeah, I think it's like this energy of there's nothing, as a creative person, there's nothing I should shy away from. And then you double that down with the urban culture, you want to call it rap culture, whatever, of this kind of like pushing the limit, all this swagger. So yeah, I think some of the jokes didn't land well because of that, but I see why they were in there.
So do you think they were trying too hard? I don't look at them as trying to alienate anybody.
Do
you think they were trying too hard?
No, that's another thing. Like, if I wish they were, because then I could go, you were trying too hard, right? You went just a little too, but the whole tone of it was exactly what it should be. I'll give you an example. You ever sit with your lady and watch a movie that she wants to watch that's like some romantic comedy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you just watch it and you go, you can follow the story. This guy likes this girl. Oh, they had a problem. Oh, his man gets some bad advice. Oh, she's confiding with her girlfriend. Oh, so you can follow this. You're not, but at the same time, you're like, how long is this thing going to go on, right? These period pieces, and, what's the famous line from the 70s? Love is never having to say you're sorry from like love stories. Nice. And by the way, everybody who loves love stories should rent that movie with. Anyway. But it's that kind of thing, right? You're watching, and just like sometimes she sits with you while you're watching space aliens or cars blow up or zombies, and she's sitting here going, why am I even, So, but every now and then you get one of these things that speaks to everybody, like Chasing Amy or Secrets in Seattle or Philadelphia Story. Any of these great kind of like put together stories. So. That as I try to sum up this, it was really good. Even as I talk about it, I'm lighter on it because first I went from I'm mad, then I watched it twice. I'm like, yeah, I get it. Now that I talk about it, if I had to put this on a 5-star rating system, as a short, I would give it like 3.5, 4 stars. It's good. I don't know if it's their first short or not. It uses the neighborhood, and I know the neighborhood. It uses the neighborhood well. It uses its talent. Some of them are new. You can feel it. The young woman who's the lead, you can tell she's new. The young man in it, you can tell he's new at it, I guess. But they're young, right? They can't be more than 21, 22 if they're anything. But I did like it. There's a lot of those cliches, like the guy at the end who's like, I'm not your brother's son, that guy. So
right.
There's characters that are not going to translate to people who don't know the neighborhood, who don't know the area.
Correct.
So people in Seattle,
that's the reason why.
I don't get it.
That's the reason why I said. That's the reason why I said, were they trying too hard? But you know what? I mistook it as, are they trying too hard, or if you're not from that neighborhood, you're not going to understand that approach. It's
sort of it's a colloquial joke. It's not about saying an inside joke. It's not an inside joke. It's a colloquial joke, right? It's a joke confined to a region, and in this case, the region is downtown Brooklyn, right, from Cobble Hill through Fort Greene, up through Sunset Heights, all these Sunset Heights. Anyway, all these kind of like Park Slope, all these neighborhoods that are essentially, if you were a good walker, within like a 5-mile zone. So I guess that's a 10-mile square radius of these urban neighborhoods, like Sunset Heights and Sunset Park, rather, and Park Slope, and Cobble Hill and Fort Greene, and the people who live there, who are Spanish and Dominican and Black and Jewish, and WASP, and they all kind of like in Asian, and they make this melting pot, and you get these weird kind of characters that, as I look at it now, I'm smiling as I talk about it because I don't live in New York anymore, and I don't get to see this anymore. But at the same time, I could show this to someone from any number of places in America, and they wouldn't get the joke. They wouldn't understand it. But so I don't know. Like I said, I'd give it 3.5, 4 stars.
I wonder about the budget on something like that, because like stuff like this does cost. And I mean, don't tell me, it was shot with an iPhone. Like, I'm not going to believe that.
Right. Right. I don't think it was shot with an iPhone. But I don't think it was too expensive. I mean, it was shot on the streets, so it seemed a guerrilla filmmaking project to me. Just because getting
I need you to stop for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I need you to stop for a second and say, so when you say a guerrilla film project, explain to the listeners what that is.
All right. So we shot a couple of films where we had a script, and we had like 8 guys and 2 cameras, and we needed like a street. Well, we don't have money to get a a permit from the city, because the permit comes with police protection, and they cordon up the da-da-da-da, and they tow out the cars if you need to. And, you're just trying to tell a 15, 20-minute story. So you go out when there's no one there. So at 11 in the morning when everybody's at work and, like, the street is barely empty. Or alternate side of the street parking days if you need, like, to shoot on the street and have no cars there, right? Or you shoot it at night in a place where no one normally goes. That's why you get a lot of shots down under Dumbo, under the bridge, because, well, back then, no one was under there. And now there's places to go, and people go there and spend $14 on a latte. But back then, there was nothing there. So you could shoot. You could have, like, not car chases, but you could have, like, foot chases and gunplay, like run around but nobody's going to look out that window and go, oh my God, I see some men with a gun, and so you could shoot a film if you shot it using your city, wherever your city is, if you manage not to get looky-loos, and looky-loos are the people who just stand and watch you as you try to act out, and like just stand in the background just staring at the camera. So you don't get those people. You don't freak out neighbors who, if you're shooting a gun or a romance and like there's some fake violence, no one calls the cops saying like a guy's beating up his lady or whatever the case may be. If you have a dog scene, no one spooks your dog and he runs into traffic, all these kind of things. Just because, it's impossible for anybody with less than, $200,000 to shoot anything in New York City. So, yeah, you shoot these guerrilla projects. And every now and then it leads to disaster. A woman was killed on a train track a few years back because and they had permits and everything. They were just kind of trying to, I guess, fit more in than they had on the permit, and she died. But other guerrilla projects have met, like the cops showed up at.
So was she a part? Was she a part of the set?
Videos.
Was she?
No, she was.
Was she a part of the?
She was
a bystander
woman. Yeah, no, she was a camera woman, and she was on the tracks when the train came through. I think over a bridge or some craziness, and she she couldn't outrun the train, and she was killed. And there's been rap acts who tried to shoot their video late at night, like all their boys, and then the cops showed up because nobody had a permit, but they had all their homies in a location in Brooklyn, and people looked out the window and were like, "What the heck is this?" Oh my God, there's like 30 guys with cameras and guns outside, and like you get like 40 cops rolling up, checking everybody's ID, and then telling you, all right, you didn't break any laws, but you can't be out here, and now you're a nuisance. So in order to not have any of that happen, unless you want the cop to show up armed and wondering what you're doing for your video, which I don't recommend, by the way. So you shoot around it. This is why most people use what they have, right? You shoot your video with your car in your house, or your uncle's house, or your cousin's car. You use your brother's, sister's, in-laws, cool boss who let you use his office if you need an office set. And it doesn't cost you anything, but what ends up costing you is the time and money to get people together and feed people when you work what they call a no-budget film. And they only promise you lunch, and they ask you for at least like X amount of hours to get it done. And, we creative people eat that crap up. It's a wasted day, but, So, yeah, get out there and make your film with your iPhone cameras and your spotlights and however you're going to do it. More creativity is what I say.
I mean, I love seeing stuff like this because, like I said, young upstarts, and this is how first looks happen.
Yeah, this is like in 10 years when he's going, wow, we started out with a small thing and we shot it in Brooklyn. Now this is our 4th Academy Award for our, and you're like, wow, I saw this, this is the, like, what did you say, the first look? Yeah, these are always nice. I remember the first time I saw Denzel Washington in a movie, right, with George, oh my God, what was his name? And he essentially played his son, but he was black, and oh my God, I forgot his name, was white, and they wondered like how it happened. And this was like 1978, and it was the first kind of like edgy like movie, like, oh, this white professional guy has a black son. What's going to happen to his suburban family? And it was You know, it was Denzel Washington's first role. I was into Dungeons and Dragons when I was a kid, and I remember Tom Hanks' first role, as I remember him, was a Dungeons and Dragons guy, right? So it's funny that you see all these people come through, and every now and then, you know, one of them strikes you as interesting in your head, and then you watch them. I was listening to something about Tom Hanks a couple of days ago, how somebody wouldn't give him a beer. He was like, I'm 67. I thought about that, and I was like, good Lord. I remember as a kid watching him. He must have been in his 20s, so that's like 40 years of me watching Tom Hanks do Tom Hanks things. So, yeah, you know, you watch the arc of someone's life from a distance of years.
You remember Tom Hanks and Bosom Buddies when it used to come on ABC?
He was good in it. They were hysterical, yeah. Him and Peter Scolari.
That's what I remember.
They were really, really good. Back then, like, sitcoms were I don't even know how to describe how simple and good they were. I mean, there was also Three's Company, which was somehow a sexual show that had no sexual tones to it. There was just a lot of innuendo all over the place, and people would tune in and watch it. Yeah, man. You take me back down memory lane and me watching watching, like, I want to say it was Saturday night, home with the family watching these, like, Barney Miller, you know.
Yeah. Those days are long gone, my friend. There's no creativity. Yeah. So
like the song
we have
says,
to.
Those were the days, my friend. I thought they'd.
I know. It's kind of crazy that when we do see some creativity, we have to kind of embrace it, because everything nowadays is a reboot or a reimagining this story. And I'm like, okay, that's me telling. When you say, hey, we're going to reimagine this story, I'm like, all right, so you're not creating anything. You're going to change a few things, and you're going to keep it moving.
Yeah. I mean, remember, I used to love Star Trek, right? And then they rebooted it, and it was horrible. It was full of, like, 25-year-old actors with all that angsty crap. And I was just kind of like, what in the world? And it just, to me, it made it worse, right? So now,
which version of Star Trek are you talking about? Which version of Star Trek?
This is the rebooting with what is it? Chris Pine.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So and I don't hold Chris Pine responsible for this, right? But somebody was like, hey, we have this in our archive. We own it anyway. We can reboot this thing 1 trillion times. Maybe it makes money. If it doesn't make money, we write it as a loss and we get it back on taxes. It's all win-win for us. Meanwhile, us fans are over here like, what is this crap? It was just, it seemed to me to be more about the actors and their youngness in these roles than any really good story. The reboots are tired. I mean, they rebooted Magnum P.I. I mean, I don't know what's next.
I haven't watched a single episode of that.
They made a million aliens. I've watched like the first 4 or 5 episodes, and it's corny. Like the lead actor, I don't even know his name. I can see him having a long career. He's likable, he's charming, he's handsome, right? They have a British lady who we have too many British actors. Don't we have any American actors for these roles anymore? So I actually zone out because I'm like over how many British people are working in American film at the cost of American actors. So I'm like, blah, whatever. They got their TC, the helicopter pilot, seems to be perpetually. I don't know. He just. Okay, well, let's start with what was the Italian guy's name in the original show? Anyway, I don't know. It's just they all come off slightly off, right? And then they added a guy.
Only one I knew from the original show was Tom Selleck. I didn't know anyone else. And T.C. Carter,
right, so
maybe?
the character name was T.C. Carter is the actor, but T.C. on the show was a helicopter pilot whose name, I can probably just look it up on YouTube. But right, and they were all military buddies, and there was a black helicopter pilot who perpetually had a bad attitude because this was on the heels of Mr. T, remember, where a big black dude with a bad attitude was worth millions. And it also had like a short Italian guy who had this very light kind of like good feeling vibe. He knew like some guys in some places, and he could do some things for you. Hey, between me and you ain't hear nothing from me. You know, that kind of thing. But at the same time, he didn't have an accent, but he always alluded to like shady dealings and betting, right? But he was one of his military buddies. They went through some stuff, right? So Magnum PI. And then in the reboot, Higgins, who was the guy who watched over Robin Masters' estate, which was this place in, I can't believe how much of this show I remember, which was this place in one of the Hawaiian Islands, this palatial estate, and who let Magnum live there because Magnum told him all these stories of his war days as a SEAL, I want to say, or some special ops guy. And then he went and wrote books about it, like, you know, the James Bond books, and became super ridiculously wealthy and was like, well, I wouldn't be here without you. You can live in the giant mansion and drive my cars. And I have a manservant there, Higgins, who runs the place and looks after it for me, who used to, I think, work in British intelligence. So then he gets there, and now Higgins acts like he's his dad and wants to know when he's taking the car and 6 dogs on him, all this kind of like weird, kind of like father-son banter. So it's essentially a father, Higgins, with this rambunctious, handsome son who's got the run of this island and these cars they doesn't have to pay for. His 2 homies, one guy who's a pilot, so he's got an airplane, and one guy who's sort of this underground figure who knows people on the inside, no matter what the inside is. And they do all this Lone Ranger, Boy Scout kind of stuff, sometimes for free, most times for free, because they were helping out damsels and maidens and all this stuff. And meanwhile, every now and then he would run against his old commanding officer who was a base commander in Hawaii. But even there, he had a pudgy homie who was still in the military, who could feed him military information, which as I got older, I realized you can't do that. You can't be telling government secrets to your homies, right? So it was the best sort of kind of mindless fluff, right? It was dime store novel stuff. And, you know, the reboot fails at that. I think the reboot forgets that. Yeah, but you have to remember who writes these stories, right? So I'm about to take off on another dive. Are you all right with that? So
go ahead.
The people who wrote these stories about Magnum PI in the 80s were, let's say they were 30s and 40s, right? So that puts them where? That puts them in their teens and 20s, 20 to 20s, in their teens and preteens, being influenced and watching what, right? So those guys are giving you what Steven Spielberg gives us, and he's so good at, you know, the serial drama of the guy with a white hat helping out this town, right? And this town may be Hawaii, but it's a town, right? It's a cowboy movie. Now what we get is by people who grew up, I would like the Blade Runner era. Those people who, let's say, were 40 and 50, they grew up on, like, at the death of Westerns. They grew up with, what's that movie that shot in Brooklyn about heroin? The Chinese Connection?
Okay.
The China Connection? But you know, they grew up on these more gritty, more So now, by the time they get to make movies in Hollywood, you know, what they cut their teeth on is different. And you watch the kind of movies you're going to be getting when these people who are now 15 and 20 and 25 start making movies, since they've only ever grown up on dystopian this and murder that. You know what I mean? So it's gonna get really interesting. It's gonna get really, really interesting. But I mean, the problem here is too many reboots, and then when you reboot it with the what's the word I'm looking for? The taste and flavors of the chef putting it together, right? So let's say I had Gabriel, what's the guy's name who did Hellboy? I have him do the Lone Ranger. It's gonna look totally different from if I have, you know, Sam Waterston? Oh my God, I'm forgetting all these guys from Philadelphia, the guy who did Hairspray. But if I have him do it versus if I have Spielberg do it versus if I have Quentin Tarantino do it, right? All these people will come to you with a different kind of film aesthetic, even as they are sort of each of let's call them thoroughbreds, right? So they each in their own pen. That whole thing is owned by like the Hollywood apparatus, and they want a certain type of movie and a certain type of look, so they can get the most money for it, as well as not offend anybody. They don't want any protest. So you get all these kind of like, but they're willing to risk protest if it's edgy, and it'll either get them an award, which translates to money, or money, which translates to money. So, you know, you end up with some of the most ridiculous reboots. Do I want to call them ridiculous? Let's just say, I don't want to be judgy. Let's just say I don't understand why you would reboot them or reboot them so badly. One of my favorite childhood cartoons was a cartoon called Reboot. Was it Reboot? It's about a computer kind of character living inside a computer, and like, you know, they had characters called the Megabyte and all this stuff. So they rebooted it. You can look it up. It's online. It's like they're 20 years old, and they rebooted it, and now it's on Netflix as a live action kind of. I don't even know how to. And I think what happens, they go, hey, we own the name and title, so we can do whatever we want with it, and then they just end up ruining childhoods. I mean, how many reboots actually, you know, do better? And I'm not talking about sequels. I'm talking about reboots. I mean, how many? I don't know.
If you look at it, some may say this Star Wars trilogy that's getting ready to close is nothing but a reboot of the original trilogy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that for the first reboot was the exact same story as A New Hope, right?
A New Hope.
And I was like, it's with Rey and Poe and, you know, Finn. It's the same story as A New Hope. And, yeah, I mean, it wasn't – there's supposed to be chapters in an ongoing story of these characters that we like, and it wasn't. It was the same as A New Hope. I mean, I don't know what else to say. And the weird thing is that guy, Brad, what's his name? Singer. Was it Brad Singer?
Bryan Singer?
Bryan Singer, right. So Bryan Singer did the X-Men movies.
Who did X-Men? You talking about J.J. Abrams?
Right. J.J. Abrams did Star Trek, which I hate, and then he did the new Star Wars, which I hate. So I generally don't dislike people's work, especially I try not to get worked up over Hollywood people. But when you murder off the promise of two incredibly beloved, like I don't see. I think, I don't know, maybe he's good with people, and they sat in the office and they were like, I love that Brian guy, and then they were like, do whatever you want. And I think the classics stand the test of time, right? And I'm pretty sure these reboots will not stand the test of time, as sure as that horrible CBS Access show won't stand the test of time.
Tell me you don't like that Star Trek.
First of all, if you put it behind a paywall, you can go kick rocks, right? The idea of Star Trek is to inspire the next generation to do something great. And they somehow missed that. They are anti-Star Wars by putting it behind a friggin' paywall. I mean, do you understand that?
Oh, yeah, I understand it. I totally get you.
The end goal of everything. It can't be.
But unfortunately, it is.
Yeah, sad but true. Side note: a billionaire just paid for all these people to get paid their degree, and I'm going to say.